Welcome to The Connector, where we connect North Carolina to ideas and North Carolinians to each other. This podcast series is from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. And now to the conversation.
Welcome to The Connector. I'm your host, Sarah Hall, Director of the Institute for Emerging Issues at NC State University. We're a public policy think tank that brings together leaders from across sectors, regions, and perspectives to tackle critical issues facing our state's economic competitiveness. For our 2022 Emerging Issues Forum, we partnered with myFutureNC to highlight the educational attainment gap in North Carolina and the state's goal of 2 million North Carolinians aged 25 to 44 holding an industry-valued credential or post-secondary degree by 2030. If you're not familiar with our state's educational attainment gap and why it requires the entire state's attention, all people, all sectors, all points of view, today we have myFutureNC President and CEO Cecilia Holden as our guest to help break it down for us. Cecilia and her team recently provided an update on that goal at their 2025 State of Educational Attainment. Welcome, Cecilia, and thanks for being here with us today.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'm delighted to be a participant in today's conversation.
Great. Well, Cecilia, before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey and how that paved the way for your role with myFutureNC?
Of course. So my background is actually based on the business sector, and my undergraduate degree is in computer science and business. I have my master's in business as well. And so when I think about the education aspect of my work, I'll tell you, I've actually been in and out of education and business throughout my career. I started out in local government, then I went to the State Department of Public Instruction for a short journey in the IT sector, and then I went to corporate America. I later came back and I worked for the North Carolina Department of Commerce as the Chief of Staff for the Secretary. Then from there, I went to the State Board of Education as the Director of Legislative Affairs, which positioned me well to be able to kind of know the three legs of the stool for the work that we do. That's business and industry, education, and then policy. So I've taken a little bit of a different road and a different path that got me here.
Yeah, so you speak all of the languages, you know all of the jargon and what makes everyone tick, and so that just made you the perfect leader for this role. I imagine you were the first person everyone thought of when it came to selecting the president and CEO of myFutureNC, and what a terrific leader you are. So we're grateful for you serving in this role. So let's start with what the educational attainment gap is and why the state of North Carolina decided to pursue this ambitious goal.
When we think about the educational attainment gap, what we're really talking about is the gap between education and training levels that people have as compared to the education level and the skills that are needed for the jobs, not only for today, but also for tomorrow. And when you look at what the business needs are, about 2/3 of our jobs in North Carolina require some level of education beyond high school. That could be a college degree, it could be a non-degree industry valued credential. But overall, when you look at where we are today, we've got about 58% of North Carolinians who are ages 25 to 44 that have the qualifications that are necessary. And that 25 to 44 age bracket is kind of that prime working age. So when we look at this, the gap is not just a statistic, it's also is a huge barrier. And what it is doing is it's holding back people from having higher paying careers. It's making it harder for businesses to find skilled workers. And then ultimately, it's the biggest differentiator when companies are trying to figure out whether or not North Carolina is the place for them to locate and to grow jobs. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the skills gap, it's the biggest reason that North Carolina set one of the most ambitious goals in the nation back in 2019. As you started out, Sarah, the goal is to have 2 million North Carolinians ages 25 to 44 that hold an industry valued credential or a college degree by the year 2030. And in 2019, it came with bipartisan support and a signature of the governor, one of the few things that was agreed upon that year when we did not even have a budget. And this goal is actually codified into state law. So it was not just a lofty number. It was a strategic step to ensure that North Carolina remains economically competitive now and as we move forward into the future. And then what makes this goal unique is it wasn't set in isolation. It was developed through a statewide cross-sector effort. Business leaders, educators, policymakers, community organizations, everybody came together. And at the end of the day, education is not just about this individual journey. It's something that we know impacts families and communities and our state at large. It's not about hitting a number. It's about making sure that people have the opportunities that they need to thrive, and that businesses have the workforce that they need to grow, and ultimately that North Carolina remains the best state to live, to work, and to do business.
Yeah, that's right. And you have some incredible leaders on the board. You have K-12, you have all of the system, the higher ed system presidents, the chamber. Tell us a little bit about who serves on the board so we can get a sense of the leadership.
Sure. We have 4 primary sectors that are serving on the board. As you mentioned, the heads of all of our state education entities serve on the board. That includes the president of the UNC system, president of the community colleges, state board of education chair, K-12 superintendent, and the president of our independent colleges and universities. So the full education spectrum sits on the board. In addition to that, we've got key policymakers. So we have a designee from the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. We have key philanthropy, and then we also have key business leaders who serve on our board of directors.
So that's wonderful. So you know that some of those discussions are going to be very robust, and we'll have a path forward. And so let's talk about that now. So as I mentioned in my intro, your team recently released the 2025 State of Educational Attainment for North Carolina. Tell us about that report and where we are in reaching the goal of 2 million by 2030.
Super excited to share this. So as I mentioned, the goal is codified into state law, and as part of that session law, the goal, when the goal was established, the General Assembly also required that myFutureNC report out annually on how we're tracking towards that goal. So we do provide an annual report to the General Assembly every year. We publicly released the most recent version, as you mentioned, in our State of Educational Attainment event on February the 20th. Due to snow, it was held virtually, so the good news is everybody can still watch it. If you're interested in going back and watching the recording, you can go to the myfuturenc.org website, and at the very bottom of our web page, you can find a little green button with an arrow that takes you to our YouTube page, and you can click on that and you can find a link to the actual recording. In addition to that, we have this report that we release every year. So when we submitted that to the General Assembly, it is publicly available as well. You can go to myfuturenc.org, and at the very top of our website screen, in very small font, you'll see you can click here to get a copy of that annual report. What the report includes, it's a comprehensive overview of where North Carolina currently stands in our journey towards 2 million by 2030. At a very high level, it not only outlines where we currently are on educational attainment overall, but it tracks how North Carolina is performing against 18 key performance indicators. And these indicators are things that research would show if we can increase in these areas, ultimately we would see increases down the road and down the Education Wiki pipeline in terms of overall educational attainment. Things like NC pre-K enrollment, high school graduation rates, post-secondary completion, workforce participation and alignment, and many, many more things. And so throughout the report, we highlight different evidence-based strategies or proven initiatives that we know are underway right now in our state that are proven to increase educational attainment, helping more people to earn credentials and to succeed. We've seen incredible collaborations across the state. We've got education leaders, business communities, policymakers. Everybody's coming together and rallying around the importance of this work. At the very end of the report, we also present our 2025 legislative priorities. And these things focus on filling the gaps that we know are important to meet the 2 million by 2030 goal. So let me lift up. Drum roll. How do we stand on meeting 2 million by 2030? We currently look at the U.S. Census data, and the most recent census data shows that we've got about 1.7 million North Carolinians towards the 2 million by 2030 goal, and that's about a 15% increase since we started tracking in 2019. When you look at it in real terms, how many people is this? It's an additional 215,000 individuals in the age bracket that we track that have a skill or credential that's necessary that leads them to higher wages, career mobility, fills the jobs that we need in North Carolina. So we want to celebrate that success. We've seen significant progress. We started out falling short by about 400,000 people, We're now currently projected to fall short by about 55,000. So while we've got success, we also still have a shortfall that's projected, and we've got to be able to plug that gap. When we look at the projected gap overall, here's an important piece that I never want to underlook or not lift up, and that is 79 of 100 counties have increased in educational attainment since 2019.
Wow.
So that's 79. That means 21 have not. Mm-hmm. Then of the 79 that have, 7 of those 79 have increased attainment, but the reason they have is because their population is declining faster than the number of people in that community that hold a degree or credential. So that's really 28 counties that we want to make sure that we are helping all 100 to thrive. Mm-hmm. So let's be clear, it's not just a statistic. Falling short is not an option, and North Carolina's economy continues to depend on this. Our communities thrive when we have higher levels of education for all of our families across the state. So if we don't act now, we're going to lose our competitive edge, and we're going to leave many people behind, and also we're going to have unfilled jobs with skilled workers. So that's why this report's not about numbers. We view this as a wake-up call. It's a celebration for the success we've seen. It's a wake-up call to double down on what we need to do to fill the gap.
Right. And Cecilia, talking about celebration, COVID also happened right after that attainment goal was set. And so certainly we expected to see, that goal impacted because of COVID. But to your point, we still need that goal. The goal still remains to be competitive, COVID or not. And so more work needs to be done. And so now that the report has been released, what are the next steps for you and your incredible team? And by the way, your team is incredible. I wherever I show up, someone from myFutureNC is in the room, and they just seem like they're everywhere doing great work. So just kudos to you and your team. But what's next in achieving the goal?
We look at the document, as I mentioned, it's a call to action. We know that the real work has to happen at the grassroots level. North Carolina is doing good things, and we just need to do more of it. We need to do it faster. We need to plug the gaps through implementation of best practices and good policy. myFutureNC is a nonprofit. We are that small but mighty team. I'm very proud of us, and so thank you for lifting that up, Sarah. As an organization, our team is laser focused on 3 key priorities, and we kind of fill that gap. We're not trying to do what's already being done, but we're trying to plug the gaps that exist across the state in terms of increasing educational attainment. And we believe there's 3 primary places that we fit. One is we measure progress. I've just shared that. The next is we advocate for good policy. I'll share more about that. And the third thing is we accelerate action across the state. So if I can just hit on each of those 3 bullets real quick. We do monitor progress, and this includes not only the state level data, but we also have 100 county profiles, and so all of our counties can go to our website, myfuturenc.org, and look to see how your county is performing, celebrate the successes, and see where the gaps exist. Second is we have a legislative agenda. We know that data alone is not going to move the needle, and so we use the data to identify what those policy gaps are and then to advocate for that downtown Raleigh. We are working alongside our policymakers to champion the solutions that are going to make it easier, not harder, for North Carolinians to get the education they need. And then the third thing is accelerating action. As I mentioned, we have a small but mighty team, but half of our team is located across the state. So we have 8 regional impact managers. We have 1 in every one of our economic prosperity zones, and they are boots on the ground, working side by side our local community leaders to try to pass along best practices, lift up and drive awareness of what the data show, and to help be a connector and a convener. Perhaps we might know of philanthropy that's interested in a particular community and a best practice, or there might be other opportunities for us to just connect people within that local community or across the state or at the national level. So we're a connector and we're a convener. But at the end of the day, it's not just about hitting a number. Mm-hmm. It's about ensuring that every North Carolinian in every corner of North Carolina has access to education and career opportunities and a better future, and that employers have a skilled workforce. And if I can touch on one little piece here, we get asked a question pretty often. When we think about 25 to 44-year-olds, people might say, well, if you're in high school today, you don't count toward the goal. So does My Future really care about that? And the answer is we are 2 million by 2030 and beyond. And we will always care about that education pipeline, because our goal would be to put us out of business and not to need it to exist, because our goal is to lay a basic foundation for future success as well, not just meeting 2 million by 2030.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the projected growth by 2050, and we're going to be 14 million North Carolinians. And so my guess is you won't work yourself out of a goal. We'll just set a new target.
Right.
And you know, I have to say, those county level data profiles, anytime I go and have to do a county, go to travel to a county, I lift up those data profiles because they're so comprehensive. It's not just K-12 data, it's workforce data, it's data about loans, it's very comprehensive. So for those of you who haven't checked out your local county myFutureNC profile data, go to the website Cecilia mentioned earlier to find it. It's got a bunch of great data and some recommendations for how to improve your county's educational attainment. So fabulous information. So Cecilia, you've been to countless emerging issues forums, and frankly, we have roped you into speaking at no less than like the last 3 or 4. I think every time in the fall you get a phone call from me, you're like, okay, Sarah, what do you want me to do now? But you know firsthand the impact that comes from connections made at the forum each year. So what success stories have you heard that came out of connections from the 2022 Educational Attainment Forum?
So I'm definitely going to hit on that, but I also like to give credit where credit is due, and I would be remiss if I didn't lift up our data partner, who is UNC Carolina Demography. So they come alongside us in this work and have from the very beginning. So I just want to make sure that I give my partner a big shout out, because they do fantastic work as well. On the forum, I have had the privilege of attending and speaking at several of these emerging issues forums. So I look forward to your phone call, Sarah. Thank you for that. I'm amazed at the power of the connections that are made during the event. It's one of those unique moments where we see people come together from all sectors. It's business, education, government. Everybody comes together, forge partnerships that can truly change lives, listen to what the big emerging issues are for our state and how can we try to solve for those. We have been fortunate to have the Emerging Issues Institute for Emerging Issues to come alongside us and to elevate our message. And when we look at 2 of the forums in particular, the topics in 2022 and 2023 respectively were advancing together, enhancing North Carolina's workforce through educational attainment. And then next was Talent First, Economics, engaging our skilled workforce for a competitive North Carolina. We were so fortunate to have you lifting up our message early on when we were just I'll say a very beginning stage organization. And then additionally, IEI partnered with My Future, and we held regional convenings all across the state to drive awareness at the local level. So we couldn't have done this work but for our partnerships and people like you. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We talk about some of those convenings. We were just talking about them recently. We traveled to several community colleges all across the state, and all 8 prosperity zones, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
About that work. So, well, Cecilia, I could talk to you all day. You know, I love spending time with you, but this is meant to be a brief, short podcast. But so one final question before we close. What is the next big issue related to educational attainment that you think leaders are really interested in exploring together, or at least will be interested in exploring together in the future?
You know, when we think about 2 million by 2030, I think it's so important that we not just focus on a number, but we're looking at labor market alignment. And so I would say that one of the most critical issues that we face today and also continue to face is to make sure that we're producing talent that aligns with employer needs. It's not about earning a degree or credential. It's making sure that they're valuable in the workforce. And we need to make sure students complete what they start. And they don't end up with debt and no degree, but instead they get a credential that leads to upward mobility for them and also fills these jobs that are needed. So when we look at the ever-evolving economy, it's a challenge. And it's a challenge to keep up with the technical skills that are needed. But I do believe that we can address this if we ensure that students are learning transferable skills, durable skills during their education journey, and that it's viewed as a lifelong process. So we don't look at education or training as one and done, but instead we look at it as reskilling and upskilling throughout your career. That's right. North Carolina has been very fortunate. We got an amazing tax climate. We've got significant investments from the General Assembly over the last several years. We've got an amazing educational infrastructure. We have consistently ranked in the top 3 of CNBC's America's Top States for Business in the last 5 years. But unfortunately, we had a slight decline in the categories of workforce and education last year, and those slight declines are really what moved us from our number 1 position to number 2. And so I know, Sarah, you are, and I would say this whole audience is just as competitive as I am. And so I want to take back the title I think that North Carolina owns. I want to say that we're going to close this educational attainment gap. So my call to action is for everybody who's listening in on the podcast and want to see North Carolina employers in all 100 counties thrive. In the coming weeks, we're going to see different budgets that are released. We hope that if you believe that this is important work, that you would reach out to your local legislators, encourage them to pay special attention. We've got a policy priority list on page 23 of our educational attainment report. Nothing is partisan. It is all nonpartisan. It's simply there to help close the skills gap. So we would ask that everybody think about what can we do to make sure that we take back our number 1 ranking as the top state for doing business. We're committed to being a connector, and as your podcast name suggests, we believe in connecting the dots. We believe in bringing people together from all sectors, from local to state, education, business, philanthropy, government. We want to see skilled North Carolinians filling North Carolina jobs in all 100 counties.
That's right. Cecilia, I don't know that I can close this podcast any better. So thank you so much for being with us today. To learn about North Carolina's educational attainment goal, visit myfuturenc.org. Until next time, let's all stay connected.
This has been a presentation from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. To learn more, please visit us at emergingissues.org.